Hey guys, it's Halfpan Talks Part 3 with Halfpan, of course. I'm going to get straight into it. But the last year has been pretty crazy, as you might have known. No Halfpan Talks. And today I'll be just talking about some of the things that helped me get through it. First, look at this photograph. I don't know if you can read it, but it says that 100% of you aren't one of these 25 people. What are you doing? It's free. Join us. We have beans. This whole story, it kind of begins in the 6 months of college that I actually got before isolation, before lockdown, before all this social distancing. When I was in like that college like situation, I always had this urge that I needed to be doing something, like I never really could relax, that I'd always need to be doing something. And I thought this feeling was because of my environment for when I started realizing that I was having it. And I looking back, I had just moved like away from home for the first time to a place where I knew no one basically, and I had relatively weak cooking skills and was fending for myself in that sense, for the first time. And I had just gotten my first ever job, which was working in a bar. Yeah, and I also started like a poetry Instagram, and I thought the whole social media thing was maybe one of the reasons. And Apple Bear vibing, by the way. I thought, and now with all this stuff happening, and now is a time to get my life together, which is it probably wasn't the best idea, but I had a great time. And but it was the first time in my life where I think I actually tried to like have this seemingly good life and do things because it felt like I should be doing them. Not what I actually wanted to do. Um, and I didn't even realize I was doing this myself. I started to feel very like Kafka-esque, if that makes sense. And I didn't really, when I would think about my own name, I didn't really feel like it was me, if that makes sense. Which is a very strange feeling. But I think it's one that a lot of people can relate to. And then COVID-19 came.
There's John Paul coming.
And I still couldn't relax. All these factors that I thought were making me not being able to relax, like even when I was watching Netflix or whatever, they'd been removed from me completely because COVID-19. I was at home. I wasn't in college. I wasn't dealing with all that stuff anymore. And I still couldn't feel relaxed. And then I loaded up this game on my PS4 that like when I was in college, and I wouldn't come home a lot because I was working a lot. So I definitely missed my family too. But when I would come home, I had attempted playing like Sekiro, and I'd given up on it because I was like, I don't have enough time and this is too hard. But when I came down from lockdown and everything was kind of going up in the air, I loaded it back up and I started to get into it. Playing the game made me fall in love with game design again, and thinking about these game concepts and like how to innovate them. Like for example, long ago I was thinking about sword combat in games and how I could implement it in a more innovative way than I had seen and like done in games, to make you feel like an actual master at sword combat, if that makes sense. And I thought maybe to make it more complex, and you could have several stances maybe, and each of these stances would do a certain thing, and certain stances would be combated by other stances, but not any stance could be completely eradicated, because if you had enough skill in the stance you could beat someone who doesn't have skill in a stance that was like well done against you. I'm not really explaining this concept well. Kind of like I'll explain it like this. Kind of like the Star Wars stances for the Star Wars lore. So I had that idea, but when I like started putting it down on paper and like started thinking about it in terms of, how would this be implemented and how quick and easy would it be to pick up, if I was making an indie game behind this. And I concluded that it would be too complex for like the average guy playing it to become a master in every single stance or whatever, or every single part of it, and it wouldn't really feel as like natural, and like earned, it'd be very much clunky changing. I thought the idea would be very clunky in aspect, um, and it wouldn't be easy to learn quickly because there's so many stances or whatever. But in my opinion, Sekiro's gameplay fixes this problem that I was like previously thinking about as like a young guy growing up, like thinking about making games or whatever. um, it completely fixes this problem and like allows you to feel like a master in sword combat very fluidly and easily, in my opinion. It maintains complexity while being simple. There are 5 moves that like Sekiro can really make, and it's an attack, a block, a head bonk, a slam and counter, and a dodge. And these 5 moves, along with a prosthetic arm, which gives added complexity for certain enemies to make them easier, um, makes the game's combat simple to learn, but like hard to master in the sense that you need to build up skill to like apply them. Um, this game, it's not like Dark Souls combat at all. It's a whole new beast. It's not slow. Like when I went back to Dark Souls after playing Sekiro, I was like, I just couldn't, because you rely on like being able to switch from attack to block in Sekiro, which in Dark Souls, once you attack you're locked in, or if once you block you're locked in. There's no way to switch between them very quickly, and I think this is a game mechanic of Sekiro which really emphasizes its difference from Dark Souls, is that you're not locked into an attack or block. You're only locked in when it has happened. Once you have swung completely, you can start swinging and switch, which I think it's an added complexity to help the player, but yet the game is so hard, even with all these like added ways to make the game easier. The game still manages to be quite hard. I think this quick pace of the game, and the combat, I think it really lends itself to allow players to reach a state of flow like athletes, and I think it's one of the best feelings you can ever get, and I think you're constantly chasing this state of flow when you're playing Sekiro, and you're trying to like defeat bosses, because you want to do everything perfect, and when you get into those flow states where you do everything perfect, and then you mess up and you're like, ah, shit, I went out of the flow. But it really, I think, is designed in such a way that it's really easy to get into those, because you can switch so easily from blocking and hitting, and you have to dodge as well. But like, it's like you I never really felt like I died because it was like the game's fault. I always felt when I was playing this game, I died because it's my fault, which Dark Souls does quite well. But there is certain moments where I'm like, I couldn't have really done much there, if that makes sense. But this game, I never experienced any of that. I'm gonna get into some quick tips for Sekiro while I'm here. And number one is look up shit, because it's a Dark Souls game, and you just need to. And the next tip is don't skip the mini bosses, because this is what I did actually when I was in college and I came home. Like, I would be like, oh, I just skipped that guy looks hard, because I used to do that in Dark Souls, but here, don't, because they build up your skill, and you gotta train yourself for this game. And basically don't skip the mini bosses because they give you upgrades and they give you like health upgrades, and it really helps out if you like just don't skip them. And I'm gonna go into another topic now, but we'll return to Sekiro. So don't go, bro, don't go. All you Sekiro fans, we're coming back. We're gonna relate the two topics. So don't worry. Don't make this runtime with this video just stop here. So my next topic is running. There was a social media trend of like run 5, donate 5, nominate 5. And I saw it kind of spreading around at the start, and I was like, this is definitely going to come to Ireland, and someone's definitely going to nominate me. And I hadn't ran in about 2 years, I'd say, maybe a year and a half, just because of college and the leaving certificate and all that stuff. I just stopped running, and like I used to run 5Ks, but I had stopped, so I was like, I definitely cannot run 5K. So before I get nominated, I'm gonna try to like train myself up again and try to get out. And the first time I ran, I started off super like slow, and it took me like 4 walking breaks to even get 5K done. Like where I couldn't do it straight. Like but it's about building it up, and that's I think it's the same thing about Sekiro. It's about building up like stamina and running, about anything in life really. But then after a run, I got like down to 2 walking breaks, another one, and another one, I was like down to 1. But definitely the hardest step and the hardest plateau to cross was just doing the 5K straight, because you're doubling your distance, if that makes sense, without a break. You're doubling the motivation you need to just continue, almost. I think it took me about 3 more runs to just pull that together and just be able to do it straight. And I felt amazing to even cross that barrier after not being fit for like a year or two. Even though I was doing it like 2 years before, I was back up to that level, and I got nominated to do the 555, and I absolutely smashed it. I like did a record time for when I was training myself up, and I just felt good. And something I love about running is I feel so natural. Like it's almost like we're built to do it, if that makes sense. Like we don't have hair because besides hair, we don't have like hair all over our bodies because it's not ideal for running. And being able to sweat is like very good to like cool down, and that's why we can run long distances. And that's kind of one of the aspects that I kind of meditate on when I'm running. And so it's kind of like this whole thing of the past and this hunting and our stamina, using our stamina to like get dinner or whatever. Another thing I love about running is that it allows you to express your inner thoughts and like expressions and philosophies, and have like discussions with yourself on like this adrenaline high, it's like kind of nice feeling. And I would be one to have discussions with myself anyway. It's like another zone when you're running. It's like a meditative phase, and I think it's something that goes like unappreciated a lot about the sport and about everything to do with it. Like but amidst like running and Sekiro, I still couldn't really relax that much. Like early game Sekiro, and I'd say this would be like just after I started training, like for the 5K, like just after I'd done the nominated thing. But another story element in story element built into a game mechanic that caught my attention in Sekiro is that after you defeat a boss in Sekiro, the way you upgrade your damage is that you meditate on the fight. You think about it. this got me like thinking about the concept of if you've trained a physical skill enough that you can train it in your mind by merely thinking through the actions. There's a wonderful TED video on the subject if you're more interested. But basically, when I was running, I kind of try and practice bosses. I know this. I try to practice bosses in my head because I didn't want to be like on the computer or like PlayStation all the time, and I start thinking about it and how I do it, and I think about the moves and all that, and I improved immensely. Like, yeah, I don't think there was a time where I did that and then like I didn't get further in the boss, if that makes sense. Um, but the simple like lore aspect of Sekiro definitely helped me a lot, and it's a skill that I still use to this day, even for college. But it's a great tactic to just use and have, and Sekiro and running basically give me that, if that makes sense. Running, meditating, and Sekiro, the idea for it. But Sekiro and running like have given me like so much more than that. Eventually, running, I found old motivation techniques to like just stop working. The whole splitting down the distances, like you know I'll get to there, and then I'll be okay, and then once you get there, you're like, okay, I'll just get there, and then once you get there, you just get there, and then eventually you've done the 5K or whatever. Or like being tough on yourself, another motivation tactic. Like, I don't want to not do this. I don't want to like not be doing this, but they just weren't working anymore. um but I started like thinking on a run actually, because I started reading this like book with some Buddhist like techniques and ideas, like integrated with science and all this. It's a brilliant book, and I can't go into it here because I'm very much ranting as it is. It's called Island, and it's by Aldous Huxley. This story has like several Buddhist ideas like intertwined in this story, and I started trying to almost think of myself and of my mind and getting used to different ways of how things felt and what consciousness and how that felt in different ways, if that makes sense. I began to think in this way of like the self, of who I actually was outside of like a physical being, if that kind of makes sense. Like a guy in a vacuum, basically. I started to think on like the stuff I love, the stuff that makes me feel like I am me, you know? Halfpan Talks episode 1, the King Cup game, my poems, and I realized that I enjoy these things not because I did them to show off, to form an opinion, or because people had a high opinion of them, but because I did them for whatever reason. Maybe it was some of them, and while I did them, I was just doing them, and that idea of doing it took over from the original like motivation, and just doing it became so enjoyable that just doing it was the point. It wasn't to be making something that someone can look at and be like, oh, this is Jack, he's amazing. It was just to be doing it, if that makes sense. And although some of these things did start in a different way that became that, like the King Cup game, I think I started because I thought making games was cool and I thought people would think, oh, that's cool, but I learned very quickly that it's not at all. But yeah, but I still love it because I did it, if that makes sense, and now it's completed, and when I was doing it I was still loving it. I didn't show anyone these things for a long time, and because I didn't really care. And I think that's a big aspect of it. Eventually I did. consumerism or whatever, YouTube. But these projects I did, and by doing them, a part of me was within them. I let go of a lot of tension in my brain in that moment when I realized that, and in complete locomotion, like flow down the road, I became completely relaxed for the first time in like half a year or more. And I owe that to running and Sekiro, you know? Maybe something else would have helped me, but these things in this atmosphere, especially the book as well, you know? Because I wouldn't have been thinking in this like way of the self if I didn't read it. And you know, it wasn't only running then when I would get into the state of flow that I say above, that Sekiro, you know, allows you to get in so quickly. That began to relax me completely as well. And in combination of like Sekiro and running, these like two seemingly like absolutely stressful, painful things that people often regard them, and they give me the highest of comfort during the most troubling times of our generation, when like movies, food, poetry, and more like just failed me. I continued running, and I was eventually able to get up to 10k amazingly. And you know, I do think it's something that people see in Sekiro and Running, that they are hard and painful things to do. But I think the thing that makes them more doable and fun and easy in the end is the concept that by doing them, you make them easier. The more you do, the easier they become. And it's like building this skill inside you that makes it easy and rewarding. Like I still don't think I'm good at running or Sekiro. But I can do them. And I built the skill, and I think they're easy to do. You know, for example, Ishin. I think the main thing is to just not give up. You know, you don't want to hesitate. I know that a lot of people are meme and like whatever, but I think it is like ultimate good advice. You don't want to hesitate on what exactly you're doing. You want to just be on the flow, if that makes sense. It's not a thing of actually making the right decisions, it's a thing of building yourself up to just do it and just be doing it, which is a crazy life skill, I think.
The point of this video isn't to convince you that Sekiro is a great game, or that running or reading will change your life, but to approach any hard or stressful challenge or even want without hesitation. To merely begin. And who knows, maybe that journey will end exactly how it started, by simply putting down your foot.